After much conviction and revelation, my family and I have decided that we will no longer be celebrating Christmas. Christmas is demonic and a pagan tradition. And I know many of you might think, but it's Jesus' birthday, how is it demonic? Jesus was never born on December 25th. He was never even born in December. And before I get into the reasons why we are no longer celebrating, I just want you to know this was a little bit difficult for us, because if anybody knows us, they know that we went all out on Christmas. My grandma was a Christmas Eve baby, so it was like in her blood. She would decorate, she would go all out. We would have holiday parties. I mean, I'm talking Christmas trees, real trees that we would decorate. The whole house completely decorated in lights, figurines and statues and snowmen and cookies and all these things. Like, people knew us when it came to the holidays, when it came to Christmas. We were that family that people talked about, and we loved it. Obviously, we didn't know what we were celebrating was demonic. We didn't know the root of the holiday, because back then we didn't have social media. We didn't have the knowledge that we do today. And so just like the rest of the world, we blindly followed the traditions that were passed on from previous generations. And we just continued those practices and continued and continued and continued until finally God has been revealing to us we should no longer be celebrating this holiday. Over the past few years, it seems that always around the holiday times, God always strips us and takes a lot from us. So he put us into a place where we really couldn't even celebrate the holiday. And over the past couple years, we've been wondering, is it because we were not meant to celebrate? Well, this year we finally decided we're not going to do it anymore. If you look at all of the Christmas traditions and what people do during this period, it all goes back to pagan rituals. You can look all of this up yourself to read for yourself to see what you were actually celebrating by doing these practices. What we've come to learn on our journey and on our walk with God, getting deeper and deeper into truth, the more you know, the more that is required of you. God has been steadily leading us to him on this walk that we are currently on. And once you know something, you can't unknow it. And I know many people are going to say, but we're not doing it. We're not celebrating the way that they're doing it. We're not celebrating what they represented and what they did. It doesn't matter, because you're still celebrating their pagan traditions. You're still carrying on things that were passed down from them, from what they did with their gods, and you just changed it when you're still celebrating what they celebrated. Even though you think you're not doing anything wrong, it is still wrong. And believe me, we were the same way. We tried to justify it, like, well, we're not celebrating, we're not doing this, but God was like, no. You are not to celebrate this. I did not tell you to have these festivals. I did not tell you to have these traditions. This is not from me. And when you are following God, you have to do what God tells you. You have to live for God. You have to put your old ways away. And this comes into play. Are you going to follow me? Are you going to give up your old life, become new and transformed for me? Are you going to still hold on to the things that I am calling you away from? Are you still going to hold on to the things that I've been telling you are not right? So this year, after going through so much in my life, I said, I'm to a point, I don't care, God. Like, I'm fed up with the life that I have been living. I'm fed up with going through trials and tribulations. I'm fed up with trying to do my own thing, live my own way, go my own way. I am completely surrendering everything. If I have to give up Christmas to get to my promised land, I am giving up Christmas to get to my promised land, because I am ready for some peace. After finally coming to this conclusion, tell me why, I was reading my word and he was speaking and showing me, yep, this is the right choice. This is the right decision. In 2 Kings chapter 17, the Assyrians had just came over and taken over Israel's land and are now occupying the land. They talk about how they got there and lions are killing all of them because they don't know how to worship the God of the land. They don't know how to worship Yahweh. And so they were taught how to worship God, but they were also still worshiping the other gods that they were taught from their childhood. It goes on to say in 2 Kings 17:32 all the way down, they also worshiped the Lord, and they appointed from among themselves priests to sacrifice to the Lord on the hilltop altars. But they continued to follow the religious customs of the nations which they came. And this is still going on among them today, which it still is with us. They followed their former practices instead of truly worshiping the Lord or obeying the laws he gave to the descendants of Jacob, whose name was later changed to Israel. For the Lord had made a contract with them that they were never to worship or make sacrifices to any heathen gods. They were to worship only the Lord who brought them out of the land of Egypt with such tremendous miracles and power. The descendants of Jacob were to obey all of God's laws and never worship other gods. For God had said, you must never forget the covenant I made with you. Never worship other gods. You must worship only the Lord. He will save you from all your enemies. But Israel didn't listen, and the people continued to worship other gods. These colonists from Babylon worship the Lord, yes, but they also worship their idols, and to this day their descendants do the same thing. And so though, yes, you might think, I'm not worshiping those gods, I'm not doing that, what are you talking about? You still are worshiping them. You're putting up these idols. You're putting up Santa Claus statues and figures, snowmen, gingerbread men, all these different figures in your house. You're setting up an altar with the tree and the lights, and you're still practicing these practices, these pagan practices that God never intended for his people to practice. If you are a true follower of Yahweh, I strongly and firmly believe that we as Christians need to stop celebrating this holiday. We can't continue to be like our parents, like our generations before us, just like the Israelites when they were in the wilderness. That old generation had to die out. They couldn't go to the promised land because they weren't following God. But the newer generation, they were able to enter into that promised land that God had declared because they did something new. God called them to be something new, to be something different, to do something different, and they did. And because of their obedience, because they weren't that former generation, they were able to enter into that promised land and see all that God had called for them to have. And I feel like God is calling us to be that new generation, to be that new generation that does the new, so that we can enter and see the things that our generations before us have never seen before. I'm just sharing what God has been speaking to me and my family, what he's been telling us. You can obviously still do what you want to do, but let me just tell you that you're either going to be all in with God or you're going to be out. You can't be 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And ultimately, you're going to have to make that choice and that decision. And if you're not on that strong walk with God just yet, continue to lean into him, to learn with him, to grow in him. But as for me and my home, we shall serve the Lord.